Picture the most famous love story of the modern age. Now put it in a rented house with unpaid bills stuffed in a drawer. Add a bride who is 6 years older than she admits, a groom who shows up 2 hours late to his own wedding, a registrar who falls asleep waiting, a candle burning down to a stub while everyone watches it, and a small, ill-tempered dog who will, within 48 hours, sink his teeth into the leg of the future Emperor of France. That's Paris in March of 1796. A city that cut off its king's head 3 years ago and is now dancing itself sick to forget it. A place where you could starve in a bread line in the morning and watch a countess in a see-through dress spend a fortune on candied violets by evening. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists looking at the young Napoleon in the paintings, all jaw and destiny. We're living it. From the inside of one small house on the Rue Chantereine, through the eyes of one person nobody ever painted, everything they would have seen, smelled, heard, and survived. So I make these history stories, and honestly, I still don't know whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just quietly fascinated by unpaid laundry bills and dog bites at famous weddings. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The knock comes before the bread does, and that is the problem. In this house, in this year, whoever knocks before 9 in the morning has come about money, and there is no money. You know this because you are the one who has to open the door. Your name is Antoine Berthoud. You're 16 years old, and for the past 5 months you have been the errand boy, the firelighter, the door opener, and the professional liar of a small rented house at number 6 Rue Chantereine, in the north of Paris. The house belongs to a citizeness named Marie-Joseph Rose de Beauharnais, though everyone who matters calls her Rose, and one man, only one, has started calling her Josephine, a name he invented for her himself, as if the name she'd carried for 32 years were a used thing he didn't want to touch. You will get to him. Everyone always gets to him. That's rather the point of him. But right now, at 7:30 on a raw grey morning in the first week of March, 1796, the only thing that matters is the knock. 3 raps. Firm. Not the baker's boy who kicks the door because his hands are full. Not the water carrier who bangs once with the flat of his palm and shouts. 3 even raps. Gloved knuckles on painted wood. A creditor's knock. You would know it in your sleep by now, and some mornings you do hear it in your sleep, and wake with your heart going before your eyes are open. You are on your knees in front of the small stove in the vestibule when it comes, and your hands stop moving. In your left hand is a fistful of kindling shavings you cut last night, with a knife that needs sharpening, and the shavings are damp because everything in this house is faintly damp, and there is a splinter working itself deeper into the pad of your thumb that you haven't had time to dig out. Your knees ache from the tiles. The tiles are cold in a way that goes through wool, through skin, straight into the joint. You have learned that if you rest your weight back on your heels, the cold gets your feet instead. So you kneel forward and your knees pay for it. The knock comes again. 3 raps, same rhythm. Patient. Creditors are always patient in the morning. They can afford to be. From upstairs, through the floorboards, you hear the mistress of the house cough once lightly, and the small dry rattle of a curtain ring. She is awake. She has heard it too. And now the entire house, you, the cook Ursule down in the kitchen, the maid Louise on the stairs with an armful of yesterday's linen, the entire house holds its breath and performs the same silent calculation. Who is it? How much is it? And what do we say this time? Here is what you have learned in 5 months about the difference between rich and poor. You thought, when you came to this house from your uncle's tannery in the Faubourg, that rich people were people who had money. You were wrong. Rich people are people who are owed belief. Madame de Beauharnais has, as far as you can determine, almost no money at all. What she has instead is credit, which is to say a beautiful smile, a soft voice with the warm Creole roll of the island still in it, a talent for making a wine merchant feel like the most interesting man in Paris for 4 entire minutes, and a drawer in the little writing desk in the salon that does not close properly because it is packed with bills, the dressmaker, the wig maker, the man who supplies the flowers, because there are always flowers in this house, always, even in weeks when there's not always meat, the carriage hire, the upholsterer who covered the salon chairs in blue silk that has already begun to fray at the arms, because it was cheap silk sold at a dear price, and everyone involved in that transaction knew it, and it happened anyway, because that is Paris now. You get up off your knees, your right knee cracks like a green branch. You brush the wood shavings from your palms onto your apron, and you notice, the way you always notice, that your hands do not belong in this vestibule. The vestibule has a mirror in a gilt frame, slightly tarnished at the corners, and hands like yours, cracked across the knuckles, a black rim of stove soot under every nail that no amount of cold water gets out. Hands like yours are supposed to stay below stairs, but someone has to open the door, and Louise cries when creditors shout at her, and Ursule threatens them with a ladle, which is worse. So it is you. You open the door. The man on the step is small and neat and cold-looking, with a muffler wound up to his chin and a leather folder under his arm, and you know the folder before you know the face. Monsieur Calmelet's clerk, not even the wine merchant. The notary's clerk, which is both better and worse. Better, because he will not shout. Worse, because notaries are where debts go when they have grown too old to be sweet-talked. Citizeness Beauharnais, he says, not a question. Madame is not receiving, you say. The lie comes out smooth and level, and you feel the small, dirty pride of it. 5 months ago you blushed when you said this. Now it cost you nothing, and some nights that bothers you, and most nights you're too tired for it to bother you. The clerk looks at you. He has the look they all have, the ones who come often. A look that says he knows the game, you know the game, and the game will nonetheless be played. Then I will leave this, he says, and takes a sealed paper from the folder and holds it out. And here is the thing you could never have explained to your uncle. The paper is just paper. It weighs nothing, and taking it from his gloved hand feels like taking a hot coal. You take it anyway. Your fingers close on it. The seal is a blob of red wax, and the wax is smooth and slightly greasy under your thumb and cold. "Good day, citizen," says the clerk, and goes back down the 2 steps into the street, and the raw air comes in around him. Coal smoke, horse dung, wet stone, and underneath it that thin, sour hunger smell that all of Paris has this winter. The smell of a city where bread is rationed and the paper money is worth less every single week. You shut the door on it, and from the top of the stairs a voice, warm and unhurried, as if the morning were a gift someone had just handed her. "Antoine, was that anyone amusing?" You look up. Madame de Beauharnais stands at the landing rail in a white morning gown, a shawl the colour of pigeon feathers around her shoulders, her chestnut hair loose. She's not beautiful the way the print shop pictures make women beautiful. Her skin is troubled. The islands and the prison did that, and she knows it. And she has trained herself to smile without fully opening her mouth because her teeth have gone bad and dark. and the smile she's built to hide it is somehow better than the one nature gave her. It makes you feel every time that she has just decided you are the one person she was hoping to see. Everyone feels this. That is her fortune. That smile is the entire estate. The notary's clerk, madame, you say, and hold up the sealed paper. Ah, she says, exactly the way another person might say ah to news that the weather had turned. Put it in the drawer, would you, my dear? The drawer. You cross the salon, cold, the fire not yet lit, the blue chairs standing in the grey light with their frayed arms turned tactfully toward the wall, and you open the drawer of the little writing desk, and you have to press the papers down with your whole palm, flatten them, feel the crackle and shift of 2 years of postponed reckoning compressing under your hand to make room for one more. You wedge the clerk's letter in, you force the drawer. It closes to within a finger's width of shut and will go no further, and you leave it, the way you always leave it, and the drawer sits there not quite closed like a held breath. And this is the house that, in 6 days' time, a general is going to marry into. You don't know that yet. Nobody in the house knows the day yet, not even, you'll come to suspect, the general himself, who changes the day twice. But you know he is coming, because he comes almost every evening now, and the whole street knows he is coming, because he does not arrive anywhere quietly, and to explain what his arriving is like, I have to first make you understand what this street is like, and what this winter is like, and why a house drowning in debt has fresh flowers in it. Hold the sealed lettuce in your mind. Hold the drawer that won't shut. We'll come back to both. Everything in this story comes back. The Rue Chantereine runs off the Rue du Mont Blanc in the 9th division of Paris, north of the boulevards, in a quarter that was fields within living memory, and is now the fashionable edge of everything. The name means the street of the singing frogs, because there were marshes here once, and on warm nights the frogs sang, and the frogs are gone, but the name stayed, the way names do. The house itself sits back from the street behind a small courtyard, a pavilion really, 2 floors and an attic, built about 30 years ago as the kind of discreet little house where a rich man installs a woman he is not married to. It has that geography still, a house designed for privacy, for arriving unobserved, for a life conducted at an angle to the official one. Madame rents it from an actress named Julie Carreau for 4,000 livres a year, and whether the rent is current is not a question you ask. Your own kingdom is the ground floor back and the attic front. You sleep in the attic under the slope of the roof on a straw mattress that you share with no one, which after your uncle's house, where you slept 3 to a bed with your cousins and the middle position was a punishment, feels like a private apartment. The attic is cold enough this winter that the water in your basin has grown a skin of ice 4 mornings out of 7, and you've learned to break it with the heel of your hand, one firm blow, and wash fast because washing slow is worse. Your fingers go white at the tips, then burn coming back. The towel is rough as a cat's tongue. By the time you're down the back stairs, your face still stings, and that sting is, in its way, the most reliable thing in your day. The house may have no money. The Republic may be governed by 5 directors nobody trusts. The paper assignat in your pocket may buy tomorrow half what it buys today, but the cold water will always hurt, and there is a strange comfort in that. Though you would not have put it that way at 16, you'd have said, at least the water does what it says it will. Ursule, the cook, is a broad Norman woman of maybe 50, with forearms like a washerwoman and opinions like a magistrate. She feeds you first and questions you second and defends you third, which is the correct order, and you would walk into fire for her. Though what you actually do for her is haul water and turn the spit and take the blame for a broken cup that Louise broke. Once, 'cause Louise was already crying and you weren't. The kitchen is the only warm room before noon. It smells of onions and tallow, and yesterday's soup bones going into today's soup, because in the winter of the year 4 nothing is thrown away. Nothing. And Ursule can make a pot of soup speak 3 days running. Bread is the trouble. Bread is everyone's trouble. The good white bread has been a memory for 2 winters. What the baker sells now on the ration is greyish, heavy, sour at the middle, and you queue for it. That is one of your jobs, the queue. You stand in the dark before dawn on the Rue du Mont Blanc with your ration cards in your fist and your collar up, stamping your clogs against the cold in a line of servants and mothers and old men, and the line shuffles forward a step at a time, and everyone watches the door of the bakery the way sailors watch weather. You have seen a woman faint in that line. You've seen 2 men come to blows over a place in it. You have heard up and down that line every rumour Paris makes, that the directors dine on 12 courses, that the price of a coach horse is up again, that there was white bread at a private supper in the Luxembourg, real white bread, and the person telling it said white bread the way a priest used to say relics. And then you carry the grey loaf home under your arm, through the morning streets, and this is where the winter of 1796 does the thing it does, the thing you never get used to. Because the same street holds both cities at once. On the corner, a war widow with a face like a shut door is selling her dead husband's boots, holding them up by the laces without a word. And past her, close enough that the wind of it stirs the widow's shawl, comes a hired carriage with the crest painted out. Crests are gone. Crests can get you noticed. And in the carriage a young woman with her hair cropped short at the neck like a person sentenced. À la victime they call that haircut. In fashion, because the guillotine. In fashion. And she's laughing at something. Her head tipped back, a fur across her knees, on her way home from a ball at 8 a.m. 3 years ago the tumbrils rolled through streets like this one. Some of the people in this bread line watched them roll, and some of the people in the carriages rode in them, or their mothers did, or their husbands. And now the same city queues and dances, and nobody says the thing out loud. There are dances now, they whisper, where every guest must have lost a relative to the blade to be admitted. Bal des victimes. You don't know if that's true. In this Paris it doesn't need to be true. It only needs to be believable, and everything is believable. Your mistress goes to the dances, not those. The ordinary glittering ones, the ones at the Luxembourg Palace, where Director Barras keeps a table so lavish that talking about it in the bread line is a form of entertainment in itself. She was in the prison, your mistress. That is the first thing Ursule ever told you about her, the first week, over the soup, with the door shut. Les Carmes. 14 months ago, that recent, that close, Rose de Beauharnais was in a cell in a converted convent with blood still on the walls from the massacres, sleeping on straw dirtier than yours, her hair falling out from fear, waiting her turn. Her husband, the general, the vicomte, went to the blade in July of 94. They took him on a Tuesday. Word in the prison was that she was listed for the following week. And then, 4 days later, 4 days, Robespierre himself went to the same blade, and the whole machine stopped, and the doors opened, and out into the summer light came a 31-year-old widow with 2 children, no money, ruined health, and nothing in the world but that smile and the address book of everyone else who had survived. You knew none of this when you took the position. You know it now, and it changes how you see everything in the house. It changes how you see the flowers. There are always flowers, I told you. Hyacinths this month, forced in some hothouse and costing what you earn in a week, standing in a vase on a table one drawer away from that stack of unpayable bills. Ursule shakes her head at them. Louise sighs at them. But you have started to understand them, or you think you have. A woman who has slept in Les Carmes waiting for her name does not look at a bill from a florist and see a debt. She sees proof of the only fact that matters, which is that she is still here, above the ground, in a warm room that smells of hyacinths instead of straw and fear. The bills are next month's problem, and next month, 14 months ago, was a thing she had no reason to expect to see. You cannot make a person like that afraid of a notary's clerk. The Republic already spent her whole life supply of fear in one winter. What's left is appetite. That is the woman. Now, the man. The first time you saw General Bonaparte, you thought there had been a mistake. It was a wet evening in the autumn, and you opened the door on the knock. An impatient knock, 4 fast raps, no rhythm to it, a knock like someone drumming fingers. And on the step stood a small, thin young man in a general's uniform that did not fit him. The collar stood away from his neck. His boots were splashed to the knee because he'd come on foot, or half on foot, in a hurry, the way he did everything. His hair was long, lank, badly powdered, hanging past his ears, and his skin had a yellowish tinge like a man recovering from fever, and he looked at you. This is the part you will remember your whole life, and you will tell it in a wine shop in another reign to people who won't believe you. He looked at you with grey eyes that went through you like a draught under a door and said, "Is she here?" No name, no card, no good evening, citizen. Is she here? He was 26 years old. He was, that autumn, the most talked about soldier in Paris, because in October, the 13th of Vendémiaire by the Republic's calendar, and Parisians count time from it now the way they count from fires, when 40,000 rebels marched on the convention. It was this small yellow-faced Corsican who put cannon in the streets around the Tuileries and fired grape shot into the crowd at point-blank range, and ended the rising in an afternoon. Perhaps 300 dead on the cobbles by the church of Saint-Roch. You can still see the pockmarks the shot left in the church's stone face. Boys dare each other to fit their fingers in the holes. The city gave him a nickname for it, General Vendémiaire, and the Directory gave him command of the Army of the Interior, and Director Barras, who is, in ways nobody explains to you, and you have learned not to wonder about aloud, an old close friend of your mistress. Barras began bringing him to the sort of salons where a soldier with mud on his boots had never stood before. And in one of those rooms he saw the widow Beauharnais, 6 years his senior, and something in him locked onto her the way, men who served with him will say later, his mind locked onto a battlefield. Totally, instantly, and without any reserve position to fall back on. Now he comes to the Rue Chantrine in the evenings, and you take his hat, which he surrenders without seeing you, and his gloves, which are always slightly damp with sweat, even in the cold, and you have held those gloves in your 2 hands in the vestibule, and felt the warmth of him still in them, and thought, the hands that fired on Saint-Roch. And from the salon through the door you hear his voice, fast, low, accented, the Italian island still rough in his French, ma foi coming out in a way that makes Louise press her apron to her mouth, going on and on, tumbling about Italy, about the Alps, about what could be done down there if anyone had the nerve, while your mistress says almost nothing at all, and laughs at the right moments, and lets him fill her silence with himself. Ursule listens at the kitchen stairs with her arms folded. "That one," she says, and doesn't finish. Ursule can leave a sentence unfinished the way other people slam doors. And here is what you notice, because opening doors teaches you to notice. He is on time to the minute, always, and she is never ready, always, and he waits in the salon alone sometimes a quarter of an hour, and you bring him a candle or make up the fire, and he does not sit. He stands. He picks things up, a miniature, a book, the vase of hyacinths, turns them over, puts them down in exactly the wrong place, paces the length of the room, 6 strides, turn, 6 strides, and the floorboards creak under him in the same 2 places every pass, and you kneel at the fire with your back to him, feeling that pacing behind you like weather. A man who cannot wait in the house of a woman who makes everyone wait. Remember that. In 6 days it becomes the whole story. The 2nd of March changes the temperature of the house, and you know it before you know why. You know it the way you know rain is coming from pressure. That morning the general's aide comes to the door, a tall polite officer named Junot with a scar and beautiful manners, who actually says good morning to you, which startles you so much you nearly forget to answer. And after he leaves, Madame does not come down until noon, and when she comes down she's somewhere else entirely, her eyes going to the window, her fingers moving on the arm of the chair as if counting. Louise gets it out of Madame's maid, who got it from Junot's groom, and by supper the kitchen has it. The directory has given him Italy, command of the army of Italy. The whole army, hungry, ragged, unpaid, stuck in the mountains above the sea at the bottom of France. His. He is 26. Generals twice his age will have to take his orders. Half of Paris says Barras arranged it as a wedding present, and says it with a look. And you are old enough now to understand the look and young enough to be angry at it on her behalf, which Ursule says is a waste of good anger, there being no shortage of things in Paris to be angry at that will actually notice. Because that is the other thing the kitchen has known for weeks. He has asked her. He asks her constantly, apparently. And she has been deciding, in her unhurried way, the way she decides everything, letting the drawer stay a finger's width open. Ursule lays it out over the soup with the brutal arithmetic of the poor. He's 6 years younger and looks it. His family is nothing, island lawyers, and his terrifying mother will hate the match. He has no fortune, 4,000 francs of debts of his own, and a salary. But, and Ursule holds up the ladle at this point, a general's salary is real money paid in real coin, and this house runs on smoke. Madame is 32, a widow, her looks going, her teeth gone, 2 children to place in the world, a drawer full of paper teeth waiting to bite. Hortense is 13, Eugène is 14, a stepfather with an army is not nothing. She'll take him, Ursule says, and ladles and the soup steam goes up between you, and she adds, quieter, in the voice she uses for things that are true, God help her, I think she almost likes him. Almost. You have thought about that word for 30 years. She is fond of him the way you are fond of a fire that is slightly too large for the hearth. He, on the other side, is not fond. There is no word small enough to be wrong about what he is. You have carried his letters. That becomes one of your jobs this fortnight, carrying letters between the Rue Chantereine and headquarters on the Rue des Capucines. Brutal little walks in the wind with paper pressed inside your coat against your chest. And once, one single time, a letter came back the other way unsealed, or the wax failed in the cold, and the fold opened against your shirt, and in the doorway of a wig shop, out of the wind, with your heart going, you looked. You couldn't help it, and I will not pretend for you that you could. 7 o'clock in the morning it began. I awake full of you. Your image and the memory of last night's intoxicating evening have left no rest to my senses, and on down the page, that fast-slashing handwriting that even his secretaries can barely read, ink flicked off the pen in his hurry, words crossed out and rewritten hotter, a man arguing with his own letter, and at the bottom, sweet mio dolce amor, 1,000 kisses, and something about her dog. You folded it up with fingers that didn't work properly. You were 16. You had never seen a man speak to a woman like that on paper, and you delivered it, and you watched Madame read it at her dressing table with her chocolate cooling at her elbow, and she smiled. Not the built smile, a smaller real one, with something in it you couldn't name then and can now, alarm. And she set it down among the pots of rouge and said, "He writes a great deal, doesn't he?" and picked her chocolate back up. The dog, since he has now entered the record, deserves his introduction, because in 2 days' time he commits the most famous act of his species in this century. Fortuné, a fawn-coloured pug with a black mask of a face, a tail like a pastry, and the soul of a customs officer. He weighs perhaps as much as 2 loaves, and he governs the house. He sleeps in Madame's bed, has since the prison, they say. They say in Les Carmes he carried notes to her under his collar, past the jailers, and whether that's true it is believed, and it buys him a lifetime's pardon in advance. He hates you on legal principle. You move objects, and all movement of objects is smuggling. He hates the general specifically and personally, from the first evening, from under the sofa, with a low sound like a cartwheel needing grease. And the general, this is the thing you'd never have guessed. The general is careful with him. The man who fired on Saint-Roch negotiates with a pug. He brings him, once, a knot of pastry from his own pocket. Fortuné takes it, retreats under the sofa, eats it, and resumes the growl on the same note, like a musician picking up a rest. You are kneeling at the fire when this happens, and you bite your cheek until it hurts. And later in the kitchen, when you do the growl for Ursule, she laughs so hard she has to sit down. And Louise laughs, and for one evening the house is warm all the way through. Then the 6th of March, and the pressure breaks. Madame calls you into the salon in the afternoon. You, not Louise, and she's standing at the window with the light on her face, and without turning around she says, "Antoine, on Wednesday evening I shall be married. You'll attend me to the Merry with Louise. It will be very quiet." A pause, the length of a breath. "Citizen Bonaparte and I have decided it's best done simply." And then she does turn and gives you the real smile, the alarmed one, and says, "The flowers will need collecting Wednesday morning," as if the flowers were the news. Wednesday, the 9th of March, 3 days. And now watch what a house with no money does with 3 days, because this is the part nobody paints. There is no trousseau. There is no time and no coin for one. There is the notary, the same Calmlet whose clerk's letter is in the drawer, drawing up the contract, and the kitchen learns its terms through the mysterious total porosity of all houses everywhere. Separate property. Her debts stay hers. His pay stays his. If he dies, she gets a pension of 1,500 a year and nothing else, because there is nothing else. a marriage contract between two people who own, between them, a sword, a smile, and a drawer of bills. The lawyers must have laughed. And there is the question of her age, which is solved the way everything in this house is solved, with charm and a false paper. Her birth record is on Martinique, conveniently across an ocean patrolled by the British Navy, so a document is produced that shears 4 years off her, and this detail delights the kitchen for a week. The general, whose papers are equally unreachable on Corsica, adds 18 months to himself, and between them the bride of 32 and the groom of 26 become, by the stroke of a clerk's pen, a pair of 28-year-olds. Ursule hears this and puts down a knife and says to the onions, "Well, at least they'll always know what the other one is. You spend the 3 days running. That is your memory of the wedding of the century. Your own breath, and cold air cutting your throat, and the strings of parcels around your fingers, and the particular ache that lives between the shoulder blades when you have walked fast for 6 hours with your arms full. To the florist twice, to the notary once, to the mairie of the 2nd arrondissement on the Rue d'Antin, a confiscated mansion, a banker's palace before the Revolution decided bankers were optional, carrying a note, and you stand in its great cold hall smelling old wax and new ink while a clerk finds a register, and your clogs echo, and you think, kings of money lived here, and now a Corsican soldier will be married in their ballroom by a town clerk, and nobody will even wash the windows for it. Back with bread, back with candles, real wax ones, dear as sin, because Madame will not be married by tallow light, and Wednesday morning, in a wind with sleet in its teeth, across half of Paris to collect the flowers, violets, out of season, hothouse violets, their smell so sweet and cold in the shop that it catches at the top of your nose like a memory you never had, and all the way home you carry them inside your coat, hunched over them like a thief, feeling the wet of the stems soak through your shirt to the skin above your heart. Because if the sleet touches them, they're dead. And if they're dead, then a madam who can look at a notary's summons as if it were a dinner invitation might actually weep, and that you could not stand. You get them home alive. Ursule looks at you, soaked, blue-lipped, hands too stiff to undo your own buttons, holding out the violets like a relic, and she says nothing at all. She pushes you onto the stool by the stove, puts a bowl of broth into your hands, closes your fingers around the warmth of it with her own 2 red hands, and goes to find dry clothes. The broth burns your mouth. You drink it anyway. Your hands ache as the heat comes back into them, that deep bone ache of Thor, and you sit there shaking slightly and entirely happy, and you are 16, and it is the 9th of March, 1796, and tonight is the wedding, and none of you, not Ursule, not the bride upstairs having her hair dressed, none of you has any idea that the groom is going to be 2 hours late. The mairie of the 2nd arrondissement, 8 o'clock in the evening, the 9th of March. Hold the scene because you will hold it for the rest of your life. A first-floor room in the old banker's mansion at number 3, Rue d'Antin. Too large for the 11 people who are supposed to be in it, and much too large for the 9 who actually are. The walls still carry the ghost marks of pictures the Revolution took down. Pale rectangles on darker paint, like the room has been robbed slowly by someone with taste. 2 windows, black with night, rattling faintly in their frames whenever the wind leans on the building. 1 long table. Behind it, the registrar's chair. On the table, the open register, a pen, an inkwell, and a single candle in a tin holder. 1 candle. You will want to remember the candle. The bride arrives at 8 exactly, which tells you everything, because Madame has never arrived anywhere exactly in her life. She's in white muslin, in March, in an unheated municipal hall, white summer muslin, because the fashion is Greek and the fashion does not negotiate with weather, with a tricolour sash and your violets at her breast, and over it all a fur-lined cloak she will not be able to wear for the ceremony itself. And she is beautiful in the way that a person choosing to be beautiful on purpose is beautiful, which is a form of courage, and her hands are cold. You know her hands are cold because you hand her down from the hired carriage. Her fingers on your wrist, and it's like being touched with keys. With her, the notary Carmelite buttoned to the chin, carrying the contract like a baby. Italian, whip-thin, famous. A man who helped bring down Robespierre and dines on it still. Barras himself, the director, big and handsome and gone slightly soft, wrapped in a coat that cost more than the house, smelling of scent and dinner, perfectly at ease. A man for whom every room becomes his own drawing room within 4 minutes. Madame Tallien, Teresa, the most beautiful woman in Paris by public vote and private acclamation, whom the crowds call Our Lady of Thermidor, and when she puts back her hood even the registrar's clerk stops shuffling paper, and behind them, in the doorway, in your one decent coat with the collar brushed twice, holding Madame's fur when she sheds it, you, Louise beside you with her chin trembling from cold or occasion, no one can say, and no groom. 8 o'clock becomes a 1/4 past. The registrar, a municipal officer named Leclerc, a tired civil man with ink on his second finger and a cold he keeps down with a handkerchief, reads the contract through once, twice, aligns his register, trims nothing, waits, 8:30. Barras tells a story about the Luxembourg. Everyone laughs. The laugh dies faster than the story deserved. The candle on the table is burning. You watch it because there is nothing else to do with your eyes, and a candle in a cold, draughty room does not burn, it fights. The flame leaning, snapping upright, guttering, throwing everyone's shadows up the walls and down again so that the whole silent room seems to be nodding. Wax slides down and stiffens in ropes on the tin. 9 o'clock. Nobody says the thing. The bride sits perfectly still on a hard chair in her summer dress in the cold, her back not touching the chair, the violets rising and falling, and she has stopped talking, and her stillness is the loudest thing in the room. Teresa Tallien holds her hand. Tallien checks his watch in a way he believes is discreet. The registrar's clerk, a boy no older than you, catches your eye across the room, and you have for 1 second, across all the ranks of the Republic, a complete conversation. Is this happening? It is happening. 9:30. And here is a thing about shame you learn that night, kneeling by the doorway with a fur over your arm. Shame in a room is like smoke. It doesn't stay with the person it belongs to. It drifts. It gets into everyone's clothes. Every minute now is doing something to Madame that 14 months in Les Carmes did not do, because the prison was done to her, and this she chose, signed for, put on white muslin for, and around 10 o'clock, the registrar Leclerc, who's been up since 6 and has a wife and a cold, does the most human thing you will ever see a civil servant do. He folds his arms on the table beside the register, and he puts his head down, and he goes to sleep, in his chair, at the wedding of Napoleon Bonaparte. His breathing goes long and slow, the handkerchief still in his fist, and nobody wakes him, because waking him would mean admitting what time it is, and the candle burns down, and the clerk quietly, without being asked, fetches a second candle and stands holding it, unlit, like a man at a vigil not yet sure whom it's for. You will hear people argue for decades about where the groom was. Working is the answer everyone settles on, because it is true and because it explains him better than any story could. 2 rooms of maps at headquarters. An army he takes command of in 2 weeks. 37,000 men without boots, without pay, without bread, strung along a mountain crest above the Mediterranean. And every hour that army eats nothing, and he has fallen into the maps the way other men fall into drink, and the wedding, his own wedding, to the woman whose name he groans onto paper at 7 in the morning has slipped his mind. Both things are true at once. That is the man in Tyre, and no one ever put it better than Ursule did later with the ladle. He forgot her because he loves Italy, and he'll forget Italy the moment he's beside her, and God preserve anyone standing where that man's attention lands, and anyone standing where it doesn't. At 10 o'clock, some will say later, past. You hear it. Boots on the stone stairs, 2 at a time, a stride you already know from 6 months of floorboards, and the door goes open hard enough to swing, and there he is. Hat in hand, hair wild, spattered to the thigh, out of breath, trailed by Junot's replacement of the evening, a 19-year-old aide called Le Marois, and the cold of the whole night comes in off his coat in a wave you feel from across the room. He crosses to the table without one word of apology, without, you will swear, on anything you're handed one single word, and shakes the registrar by the shoulder and says, "Come, monsieur, marry us, quickly." And Leclerc wakes, and beholds standing over him the commanding general of the Army of the Interior, and marries them quickly. It takes minutes. The clerk lights the second candle from the stub of the first. The witnesses step up. Barras, Tallien, Camelet, young Le Marois, who by law is too young to witness anything and does it anyway. This being a night on which the papers are, let us say, aspirational throughout. The bride's shaved years, the groom's added ones, an underage witness, and a registrar who strictly may not even hold the authority to marry anyone. A detail lawyers will feast on years from now, when it suits an emperor to have this night annulled. None of that exists yet. What exists is the register and the pen scratching. You can hear the pen, that's how quiet it is, the nib catching on the paper's tooth, the tiny tick of it being dipped, and her hand steady, and his signature fast and slashing like his letters, ink flicked, done. And he takes her hands, both of them, in front of everyone, and looks at her the way he looked at you in the doorway that first evening, straight through. Only this time what's behind the eyes isn't a draft, it's a furnace with the door open. And he says something to her too low for the room, and Barras booms, and Tallien laughs, and Teresa embraces her, and the registrar stamps, and it is done, and outside a wet wind is going down the Rue d'Antin. And inside, on the table, the first candle stands burnt to a flat coin of wax with a black curl of wick in it, and while the party gathers cloaks, you watch the clerk pinch the dead wick between finger and thumb, absently, the way you do it, a servant's gesture, and press the still soft wax with his nail. You could not say why the little wax coin holds you. You are 16. You only know that everything else in the room went by too fast, and that stub of candle is the only thing that stood still the whole 2 hours, and it measured them. And measuring is a kind of remembering, and somebody in a room like this ought to be remembering. The wedding night belongs to the dog. Understand the sleeping arrangements at the Rue Chantraine, which no one thought to renegotiate. Fortuné sleeps in Madame's bed, has since the prison, will not be moved, has never once been asked to move, because who would do the asking? and on the night of the 9th of March the bridal party comes home near midnight, and the house is candlelit and warm, because Ursula has burned tomorrow's wood ration on principle, and there is wine and cold chicken laid out that mostly nobody eats, and then the doors close, and the servants go down and up to their floors, and the new married general of the army of Italy ascends to the bedroom of his wife and finds in the exact centre of the bed, mask-faced, tail tight as a snail, 4 pounds of standing pug. What happens next you do not see. What you hear, you in the attic directly above, lying on your straw with the day still ringing in you. What you hear at some small hour is one sharp canine explosion, one human shout, bitten off in island-accented French, a thud, a woman's voice soothing in 2 directions at once, and then, unmistakably through the floor, laughter, hers, helpless, ashamed of itself, going on. In the morning the story is all over the house before the fires are lit, delivered to the kitchen by Madame's own maid with the joy of a courier bringing news of a victory. The general, advancing on contested territory, was met by the defender. Monsieur has a bite on the leg, the shin deep enough to mark. The dog has been pardoned, was never charged, and Monsieur, rapping his own shin at 1 in the morning, is reported to have said that it was clear he was expected to share the bed or leave it, and he had no intention of leaving it. Ursula laughs until she has to hold the table, and you stand in the warm kitchen with your bowl in your hands, tired to the bone and grinning, and something in you says quietly, "Mark this." Because the great of the world will spend the next 20 years arranging how this man is remembered. The bridges, the columns, the son of Austerlitz, and you were under the roof the night the whole legend, 12 hours old, was defeated in the field by a pug. It is the funniest thing that has ever happened in your hearing. It stays the funniest thing for 50 years, and it has a shadow on it that you can't see yet, and the shadow is this. He got 2 nights, count them. The night of the 9th, with the bite. The night of the 10th. That is the entire honeymoon of the most famous marriage of the age. 2 nights in a rented house with a hostile dog and a drawer full of debts. Because on the morning of the 11th of March, before it is properly light, there is a travelling carriage in the Rue Chanterine, and you are the one holding the lantern. The 10th of March, the one full day of the marriage, deserves its own accounting, because a day is a strange thing when everyone in the house knows it is the only one. It does not feel like a honeymoon. It feels like the day before a surgery. The general is out by 9. Headquarters, the War Ministry, the Directory, farewell calls, a man burning through the last of a fuse, and back by late afternoon, and in between the house pretends at ordinariness the way a family pretends at cheer around a sick bed. Madame writes letters at the little desk with the drawer that won't shut, Fortuné at her feet in his triumph, insufferable, patrolling the salon like a marshal reviewing conquered ground. You are sent out twice, once to the saddler on the Rue de Mont Blanc for a travelling strap, once, absurdly, wonderfully, to the confectioner for a box of candied fruit, which Madame wraps herself in paper with her own hands for him to carry in the carriage, and you watch her do it through the open door, the paper turning, her rings catching the light, the small frown of a woman making a parcel, and you think, that is the same motion my mother makes. That exact motion. The wrapping of food for a journey is older than kings, and it does not care who you are. There is one bad moment. Late morning, a knock, 3 raps even, gloved, and your stomach does its trained drop, and you open on a creditor's clerk. A new one, young, sure of himself, and before you can produce the sentence, Madame's voice comes down the stairs behind you, light as ever. Ask the citizen to present it after the 15th, Antoine. Everything is to be presented after the 15th, and the clerk looks past you and up, and whatever he sees on the landing, the smile, the loose hair, the pigeon-grey shawl, he goes. They always go. But you catch it this time, what you never caught before, because now you know to look. The half-second before the voice, the grip of her hand on the rail, the lightness is built, like the smile. Everything about her that looks like ease is load-bearing, and you're ashamed of every time you marvelled at it as if it were free. Supper that last evening is early and short, and you serve at table. And the two of them talk about Italy. That is, he talks about Italy, the passes, the state of the magazines at Nice, the names of generals who will resent him, Masséna, Augereau, saying the names the way a boy says the names of dogs he intends to master. And she listens with her chin on her laced fingers and her eyes on his face, and once she catches you refilling the water and gives you behind his shoulder a look of such perfect comic despair that you nearly disgrace yourself with the carafe. He eats fast and doesn't notice food. You clear his plate and it looks pillaged. She eats almost nothing and arranges what's left. You clear her plate and it looks painted. If you want to know two people, clear their plates. Ursule taught you that. Ursule is right about everything except when she's wrong, and about those two plates she was never wrong once. And then it is dark, and then it is late, and then it's 5:30 in the morning, the 11th of March, and you're standing in the courtyard holding a lantern in a cold that has teeth. The carriage came at 5, a yellow post-chaise, mud to the axles already from the depot, 4 horses breathing plumes, a postilion beating his own arms across his chest and strapped up behind. The campaign trunks that came over yesterday from headquarters. You helped carry them through, and a general's trunk is heavier than sin. Corners of it eating into your shoulder, the smell of it leather and gun oil and paper. Now the horses shift and stamp, iron on stone, that hollow ringing clop that is louder than any daytime sound, because the street is otherwise silent, black, every window dark except this house, whose lit doorway throws a yellow panel across the courtyard with your shadow in it. Your fingers on the lantern ring have gone past cold into wood. The lantern's heat reaches exactly the inside of your wrist and no further. Overhead the sky is doing its first thinning, black going to charcoal in the east over the rooftops, and the last stars sit in the cold like nail-heads. They come out together, no ceremony. There is no one to see but you, Louise crying frankly into her apron in the doorway, Ursule with her arms folded, the postilion, and the horses. He is in his grey travelling coat, hat low, a folder of papers under his arm even now, even here. She's wrapped in the fur-lined cloak over her nightgown, her hair loose and disordered down her back, no paint, no built smile, her face bare and 32 years old and nearer to beautiful than you've ever seen it, and she has Fortuné clamped under one arm like a muff, and the dog, for the only time in recorded history, is silent. What is said between them is not for you, and they say it low, by the carriage door in the lantern light, her free hand flat on his chest, his hand over it, pressing it there, and his head bent down over her. He's barely taller than she is, this master of Italy, and standing together in travelling clothes in the cold they look, and you think it then. In these words, they look like two young people at a coach stop, which is what they are. That is all they are. History is standing 6 feet away, holding history's lantern. and history's arm is getting tired, and what history mostly notices, God forgive it, is that the general's boot heel is on the hem of Madame's cloak, and neither of them knows it. Then he breaks. He is the one who breaks, tears himself off her the way you tear a bandage fast because slow is worse. And he is up into the chaise in one movement, and the springs dip and complain, and the door claps to, and through the glass you see him already reaching for the folder, already before the brake is off, and the postilion swings up, and the whip talks once in the air, and 4 horses take the weight with a lurch and a grind of iron tyres on stone, and the whole yellow contraption rolls out of the courtyard and left down the Rue Chanterine, hoofs and wheels loud between the sleeping houses, then quieter, then only a texture in the air, then gone, and the street lies there empty in the charcoal light exactly as if none of it had happened, and your mistress stands in the middle of her courtyard in the cold with her dog under her arm, looking at the corner where the carriage went for a long time, long enough that Louise stops crying, long enough that the sky moves one shade. Nobody speaks to her and nobody goes in. Then she turns around, and her face has the built smile back on, hung slightly crooked, and she says to the 3 of you, in a voice that is almost entirely her voice, "Well, there's no sense freezing over it. Ursule, I think chocolate. For everyone. Yes, everyone." And she goes up the steps and into her house, and that is the end of the honeymoon of Napoleon and Josephine Bonaparte. Married Wednesday night, 2 hours late by a sleeping clerk. Bitten Thursday. Gone Saturday before dawn. 2 nights. And the strangest part, the part that takes you years to understand, is that the marriage, the real one, the one the world still talks about, does not end in that courtyard. It begins there. Because everything people mean when they say Napoleon and Josephine, the letters, the ache, the jealousy, the legend, all of it is made of distance, and the distance starts now, and you, as it happens, are about to become one of its couriers. The chocolate that morning is real chocolate, the last of a block that was being saved, grated by Ursule's own hand into hot milk, and you drink yours sitting on the kitchen stool with your palms around the bowl, while the light comes up grey in the window, and it is thick and bitter-sweet and burns pleasantly going down, and Louise's eyes are swollen, and Fortuné, restored to insolence, gets the skin off the top of the milk in a saucer on the floor, and Ursule stands at her table with her own bowl and says nothing for a while, and then says to the window, "Nice, then Italy, boy his age." And that is Ursule's entire commentary on the departure of the Commander-in-Chief, and it is, as usual, complete. He wrote to her from the first stop. You need to understand the speed of this. The chaise left before 6, it changed horses at Fontainebleau, and within days there is a letter back in Paris in that slash in hand, and then they never stop. From Chanceaux, from Chalons, from Nice, when he reaches the army on the 27th of March, and then from the war itself, and the war, once he touches it, goes off like powder. You hear it the way Paris hears it, in waves. In April, the impossible starts arriving in the newspapers. Montenotte, a victory. Millesimo, a victory. Dago, Mondovi. This ragged, unpaid army that all winter was a joke in the bread queues, suddenly pouring down out of the mountains into Piedmont, and inside of 2 weeks the King of Sardinia sues for an armistice. And Paris, which 3 months ago barely knew the name Buonaparte and mispronounced it when it did, is saying Bonaparte on every corner, and men read the bulletins aloud outside the print shop, standing on steps, and strangers stop strangers. And in May, the 10th of May, the bridge at Lodi, You will hear about the bridge at Lodi for the rest of your natural life. A wooden bridge over the Adda swept by Austrian guns, and the story that runs through Paris like fire in stubble says he took it at the head of the column himself, in the smoke, in the grape shot, and his soldiers, who in March had no shoes, have given him a nickname, the Little Corporal, and they say it the way you say a thing you'd die for. Milan opens its gates on the 15th of May, 2 months, 2 months from the courtyard and the lantern, and every few days through all of it, into the letterbox of a rented house on the Rue Chantrine, in among the bills, falls the other war. The letters. You carry them up from the door and you know is before you turn it over. The paper handled hard, the direction written so fast the ink spattered, sometimes soldiers' mud on the cover. Once what Ursule swore was powder black smudged under the seal, a letter that had been in a coat at a battle. You put them on the salver, and here is the terrible comedy that you are perhaps the only person in France positioned to see whole. At one end, in Italy, a man between battles, sitting down at some requisition table at 2 a.m. to write, "I have not passed a day without loving you. I have not passed a night without clasping you in my arms. I have not taken a cup of tea without cursing the glory and ambition that keep me from the soul of my life." A man begging in ink, threatening to abandon armies, to leave glory sitting in the road like luggage, and come to Paris on a post-horse if she does not write. And at the other end, in Paris, on a chaise longue, with the spring coming in at the window, and the dog on her feet, a woman who reads the letter, and smiles, and puts it with the others, and somehow, in a day with nothing in it but a dressmaker and a drive in the Bois and supper with Italians, cannot find the hour to answer. When she does write, it is 3 lines, cool as well water, and she shows no one, but the maid sees, and the maid tells the kitchen. She addresses him vous. He storms at her in ink for it. Vous. Vous yourself, he writes, and you can hear the letter being written, the pen digging. The whole house is now living inside a one-sided correspondence with the most victorious man in Europe, and the house's private, unspoken guilty verdict. Ursule's verdict, delivered once, quietly, over the peeling of a vast quantity of spring carrots, is this: he loves her like the plague loves a city. You can't answer that with 3 lines. But God knows you can't answer it the way he wants either. There's no answering it. Poor woman. A pause. The knife going through carrots, tock, tock, tock on the board. Poor man too, if it comes to that. And that spring in that kitchen, with the window open to the courtyard and the smell of wet stone coming in, is where you learn the thing about love that no ballad had mentioned. That it can be entirely real on both sides and still not fit. His too large, hers too careful, a furnace and a fire screen. And that the world's most famous romance seen from the pantry is mostly a story about 2 kinds of loneliness paying each other visits by post. Now I have to slow down and give you the texture of that spring, because from the outside, from the bulletins, from history, it is all trumpets, and from inside the house on the Rue Chantrine, it is something much stranger, and the strangeness comes on gradually, the way water comes into a boat. Begin with the money, because the money changes first. In March you are lying to creditors through a crack in the door. By late April the same men are writing letters that begin with compliments. By May they are sending gifts. The wine merchant, the very one whose bill has ripened in the drawer for a year, delivers, unasked, with his card, a case of Chambertin for Madame la Générale, and stands in the courtyard bowing at the house in general, at the windows, at you. You carry the case in, and the bottles knock together softly in their straw, that expensive muffled clink, and Ursula looks at the case and looks at you and says, "Last month he'd have had the chairs." 'Cause that is what was coming, you understand. That is what after the 15th meant. Seizure, bailiffs, a cart, the blue chairs going out the door with the whole street watching. And now the same debts still exist. Not one sou of them has been paid, but they have stopped being dangerous because everyone in Paris has done the sum that matters, which is not arithmetic at all. The man at Lodi will not always be at Lodi. His wife's paper is good. Her smile was always the estate. Now the estate has an army. And you, hauling that case down the kitchen stairs with the straw prickling your forearms and the bottles chiming, work out something you never forget. Debt was never about what is owed. It is about what the creditor believes comes next. Belief is the whole currency. The Republic prints assignats, and nobody believes them and they die. A Corsican wins 6 battles, and his wife's unpaid bills turn into invitations. You are 16, and you have just understood banking better than the men who built the mansion where she was married. Then the door changes. All your training at that door was defensive. The level lie, the regretful face, the body angled to fill the gap. Now the knocks multiply and turn sweet, and everyone wants something, and the wanting has changed direction. Officers' wives leaving cards, contractors, army contractors, smooth men in good broadcloth with southern accents, the men who sell the Republic its boots and its bad flour, who ask 5 minutes of Madame's time and come out having offered, you learn later, to cut her in on syndicates supplying the very army her husband commands, because a word from her, a name on a list, a signature, is worth thousands. And everyone in this Paris skims. Everyone, the directors down. It is not even hidden. It is the weather. Petitioners, widows of émigrés wanting names taken off lists. A man with a scheme about Belgian linen. 2 separate poets. Fortuné bites one of the poets, a small formal bite, a stamp on a document, and the poet incredibly works it into the poem. Madame receives them all with a built smile, promises little, writes some letters, and does, you notice, begin to say yes to certain of the contractor gentlemen. And a new man starts calling in the afternoons, a captain, Hippolyte Charles, hussar's uniform, tiny, exquisite, funny, genuinely funny, jokes tumbling out of him. The first person you've ever heard make Madame laugh until she wipes her eyes. And he sits with her for hours, and the maid says nothing, and Louise says nothing, and Ursule says nothing so loudly that the kitchen rings with it. You're 16. You half see it. You put it where you put the drawer that won't shut, in the part of the house one does not look at directly, and I am going to leave it exactly there, where you left it, because this is a story about 1796, and in 1796 nothing has happened yet except laughter in the afternoon, and a boy your age had carrots to fetch, and the third thing that changes is her. And this is the one you'd never have predicted. She should be triumphant. Paris is at her feet. The papers print her name. When she enters her box at the theatre now, people stand up to look, and a murmur goes across the house like wind across barley. La Générale, la Générale. And one night in the foyer a crowd actually presses in just to see her, and you, attending with her cloak over your arm, get an elbow in the ribs from a fat man trying to bow past you. She should be lit up like the Luxembourg, and instead, as the spring warms, a heaviness comes into the house. She sleeps badly. You hear her, through the floors, moving at 2, at 3, the creak path from bed to window and back. She's often unwell in a vague way the doctors visit and name nothing, 'cause the letters from Italy have changed key. The begging has become summoning. Come, they say now, come to Milan. The road is safe past Turin. I will send I will send Murat. I have a palace for you. A palace, the Cerbaloni. Marble, he describes the marble, and every courier from the army carries the same demand ratcheted one turn tighter, and twice now the thing has escalated to the level of governments. He has written to the directory, the actual directory, the 5 men who rule France, pressuring them about his wife's travel arrangements, and the directors who need their miracle general concentrated on Austria and not on the Rue Chantereine, have begun with the full weight of the French state encouraging Madame to go to Italy. Barras calls. Barras is charming. Barras is charming the way a man is charming when he's been given an errand. And she does not want to go. She tells no one in words, and she tells everyone in everything else. Italy is a war. Italy is roads through mountains, inns, heat, cannon somewhere over the hill, and a husband whose letters, she's heard to say it once at supper to Teresa Tallien, half laughing, with the fear showing through the laugh like a knee through worn cloth, whose letters are so violent in their love that they frighten her. He writes as if he means to breathe her instead of air. Who wants to be air? And Paris is Paris, her children. Hortense at Madame Campin's school in Saint-Germain, Eugène about to join his stepfather's staff, the one point on which she and the general are in perfect instant agreement, her friends, her dressmaker, her afternoons, her captain of hussar with the jokes. She delays. She is magnificent at delay. It is her mother tongue. First it is her health, then it is, and the house learns to keep its face straight, a hinted pregnancy which melts away unmentioned when it has served its month. The general in Italy receives each excuse in turn, believes what he must, despairs in ink, wins another battle. It becomes almost unbearable to carry the letters. You bring them up from the door, that hard-handled paper, the mud of Lombardy actually on your fingers, the seal pressed so hard it has bitten through, and you put them on the salver, and some mornings they lie there until noon, and once, God help you, you stood in the hall with one in your hand, 3 armies moving on the other end of this object, and heard from the salon the captain of hussars doing his imitation of a directory clerk, and her laughing, that real laugh, the one nobody built, and you looked down at the letter and felt something you had no name for then. You have one now. You were embarrassed for a man who was, at that hour, probably the most powerful human being in Europe. Pity climbs down as easily as it climbs up. Nobody tells you that. It's servants who find it out. It ends. The delay, the whole suspended spring, in the last days of June, and it ends the way everything in this story ends, which is with the great world putting its shoulder against the door of the little house. The pretexts have run out. The directory has, in effect, ordered her to Italy the way you order a shipment. Carnot himself is said to have written to the general that his wife is coming as a fact of state. And on the evening it becomes final, the house is very quiet, and Madame sits at the little desk for a long time with one candle, and then does something you only half understand as you watch it through the doorway, bringing in the tisane she rang for. She opens the drawer. She takes the bills out, handfuls, the whole crushed strata of them, 2 years of paper, and sorts them, unhurried, into small piles by candlelight, and reads some, and stacks them square, and ties them with tape into bundles like letters, and puts them back in order. and the drawer, relieved of its chaos though not of 1 franc of its contents, closes. Flush. For the first time in your service. You hear the small wooden click of its seating, and it goes through you strangely, and you stand there with tray, and she looks up and sees your face and reads it whole. She always reads you whole, and gives you not the built smile but the crooked one from the courtyard, and says, "Order, Antoine, is what we do to the things we cannot pay." And then, taking the cup, "We leave for Italy on Sunday. You'll help Louise pack the plate." Sunday is the 27th of June, 1796. Another carriage at another dawn, a berlin this time, heavy, 6 horses, an escort arranged in stages, trunks roped and roped again, and the party assembling in the grey courtyard like figures being set on a board. Madame, pale, in a travelling pelisse. Her maid, Junot, sent by the general from Italy expressly to fetch her, splendid and impatient. The financier, Monsieur Amelin, going south after contracts. Fortuné, in a basket he does not accept, voicing his position. And, stepping up into the carriage last, settling opposite Madame with a joke already going, in his hussar's fur even in June, Captain Hippolyte Charles, attached to the escort by an arranging of papers that nobody in the courtyard examines aloud. Ursula's arms are folded so hard her hands have gone white at the grip, and Madame leans from the carriage window and gives her hand to Louise, who cries, and to Ursule, who bows over it and says, "Madame," in a voice like a cellar door, and then, "You are holding the near horse's cheek strap. That is your station, the leather cold and slick in your fist, the horse's breath rolling over your knuckles in warm wet clouds. Then to you." She looks at you a moment. The whole courtyard hangs off the moment, and she says, "Mind the house, Antoine, and mind Ursule," a beat. The crooked smile one last time hung on the morning like a coat on a nail. The drawer is not to be opened, and the whip talks, and the weight comes on to the traces, and the iron tires grind, and 6 horses walk the most reluctant honeymoon journey in the history of France, out of the courtyard and south toward the war, and you stand in the empty morning holding a lantern you have forgotten is lit, and that, with the smell of horse still on your hands and the sound dying down the Rue Chantereine, that is the last of it. Of the beginning, I mean. The rest belongs to the world. Milan, the palace, the marble, the years, the crown that is coming, the letter this same man will write to this same woman one December morning 13 years from now, beginning "My destiny requires it," which is how emperors say the drawer will not close. But that morning you know none of it, thank God. That morning you're a boy in a courtyard with chores. You go in, you bank the kitchen fire, you eat what Ursule puts in front of you. The house settles around the two of you, beam by beam, into its off-season quiet, and the frayed blue chairs stand in the shuttered salon keeping their own counsel, and upstairs the little desk sits with its drawer shut, flush in the dimness, full and silent and paid for by belief alone. But a story for sleep should not end on a departure, and yours didn't, so let me give you the summer, because the summer is where the day-to-day of it comes back, and the day-to-day is what you came here for. A closed-up house in July is a world of its own. With Madame gone south, the establishment shrinks to its bones. You, Ursule, Louise 3 days a week, and a house that is suddenly, unnervingly, mostly furniture. The shutters stay closed on the street side, and the salon goes dim and honey-coloured. Bars of afternoon light coming through the slats, and line across the floor in stripes that move, hour by hour, like the slowest clock in the world. Dust becomes an occupation. You had never understood dust. In a lived-in house it hasn't the leisure. But in a still one it settles like snow visibly, a grey bloom on the dark tabletops that Louise wipes on Tuesday, and that is back, faint as breath on glass by Friday. You learn the house's sounds without its people, the stair that ticks at night as the day's heat leaves it, the shutter hook that taps in a west wind, the deep occasional knock in the walls that Ursule says is the beams talking, and you privately believe is the house asking where everyone went. You polish the plate that didn't travel, you turn the mattresses, you oil the door hinges, all of them one Thursday, with a feather and a saucer, because Ursule announces that she will not spend a summer being startled, and afterward the house goes so silent at the doors that you startle each other instead. The heat that summer is real heat. The courtyard stones holding it after dark so that you can sit on the kitchen step at 10 at night with your back against warm stone and your bowl on your knees. And that is where the two of you take to eating in the evenings, you and Ursule, cold soup and bread and whatever the day left over, with the sky going a slow green gold over the roof line, and the swift screaming around the chimneys in circles, and the city sounding different in the distance. Looser, warmer, dance music from somewhere 2 streets over on Saturdays, a fiddle, and something with a drum, going till very late. Twice she lets you go. You stand at the edge of a courtyard dance off the Rue du Mont Blanc with a cup of thin wine, watching apprentices and laundry girls turn under strings of paper lanterns, and a girl from the Glovers asks why you're standing like a fence post, and you dance, badly, honestly, your clogs like anvils, her laughing at you and then not at you, and you walk home along the middle of the empty street at midnight with your jacket over your shoulder, 16 and employed and slightly in love with everything, under the same stars that are that same hour standing over the plains of Lombardy, where the army of Italy sleeps around its stacked muskets. You think that thought, the same stars, on the way home, and are embarrassed by it, and keep it. You have kept it 50 years. News comes all summer like weather from the south. The bulletins in the papers, read aloud on steps. The Austrians send an army over the mountains to save Mantua, and it is beaten. They send another, and it is beaten. Names you will hear for the rest of your life entering the language one gazette at a time. Castiglione in August. In heat, they said, killed men in their ranks before a shot was fired. And folded inside the public news, the private line, a letter from Madame's maid to Louise in September with the Milan postmark that the kitchen reads 4 times. Madame is well. The palace is marble indeed, too grand to heat, she says, come winter. The general, and here the maid's writing goes small as if lowering its voice. The general, when he can get to Milan between the fighting, is a storm in the house. He loves Madame so that the servants don't know where to look. He sits by her at dinner and holds her hand in front of the aide-de-camp, and the Italians find it astonishing, and Madame is gracious and tired, and Fortuné bit the major domo. The kitchen receives this last item with deep satisfaction. Standards, says Ursule, are being maintained, and in October money comes. Real money. A draft through the notary with instructions in Madame's hand. Wages current. All arrears. You're handed in coin in the kitchen on an ordinary Tuesday. More silver than you've ever held. Your whole back pay to the beginning. And the coins are heavy and cold and then warm in your fist. And their weight is absurd, wonderful, specific. And you carry them upstairs and sew half into the ticking of your mattress with a sail needle Ursule lends you, kneeling on the attic floor in the candlelight, pushing the needle with the thimble because the ticking fights back, pricking yourself once anyway. A bead of blood you suck away, and you sleep that night literally on top of your fortune like a dragon in a story, and it is one of the pure nights of your life. And with the draft come other instructions, which Ursule reads, standing up and then sits down to read again. Bills. Certain bills, not all, a list, are to be presented to Monsieur Calmelet and paid. Paid. You go with Ursule to the notary's office to deliver the list, both of you in your best, and you watch a clerk, the clerk, you're nearly sure, the cold morning clerk of the 3 even raps. You watch him check items off that list with a steel pen, tick, tick, tick. Each tick a morning you knelt at the vestibule stove with your heart going, and there is no ceremony to it at all. That's the thing, no thunderclap. The terror of 11 months just dies quietly on a desk under a pen, converted by Italy into arithmetic. Outside on the step, Ursule puts her bonnet straight and says, "Well," and then, after a silence the length of the Rue du Mont Blanc, "The flowers, I notice, were on the list. And you say the flowers were always going to be on the list," and she looks at you sideways, and something passes between you that is the whole 11 months, and neither of you laughs until you're safely round the corner, and then you both do. Leaning on a railing, a boy and a cook, howling at nothing anyone else could see. Winter comes, and with it Arcole. 3 days in November, a bridge again. Always bridges with this man, the flag, the marsh, the stories multiplying. And the house is warm and small and yours. You black the grates. You queue for bread, and the queue is shorter, or you are taller. Hard to say. You turn 17 in the kitchen with a cake Ursule denies having made, straight-faced, while it stands steaming on the table between you. And on an evening in late winter, sitting on the kitchen stairs mending the fire bellows with a waxed thread, the leather gone at the fold, the awl braced against your knee, the thread creaking through with that good tug at each stitch, you find yourself telling Louise's replacement, a new girl of 15 up from Chartres, scared of the knocker, scared of the silver, scared of you until Tuesday, all about it, the whole thing, the 3 even raps and how to fill a doorway, the candle at the mairie, burnt to a coin, the 2 hours, and the sleeping registrar and the boots on the stairs, the dog, the shout, the laughter through the floor, the lantern in the courtyard, and the boot heel on the hem. She sits on the step below you with her chin on her knees, and at the dog she laughs so suddenly she claps her hand over her mouth and looks at the ceiling as if Madame might hear. And you say Madame is in a palace in Milan, and the girl says, in the voice of Chartres and 15 and all the world's good sense, "Then who's minding her drawer?" And you look at her and decide in that instant on the step, with the awl in your fist, that this one will do. I have skipped over things in my hurry to get you from the wedding to the summer, and a night like this is long. So let me go back and pay 2 debts of my own. Because there were 2 days in that spring that deserve to be lived through whole, minute by minute, and not summarized. The first is a Thursday in April, the day you crossed all of Paris twice. The second is the night of the fated general, when the city put on its show, and you saw it from the one place shows are true, which is the side. The Thursday begins at 5:30 with Ursule's knuckle on the attic door, 1 knock because 1 is all you need now. The ice on the basin is thinner, April ice, a skin like the skin on milk, and it gives under your heel of hand with a sound like a biscuit. You wash. The towel rasps. You dress in the dark by touch. Shirt. The waistcoat with the button you moved yourself. Jacket. The clogs cold as 2 little cellars for your feet. Down the back stairs on the outsides of your feet, because the 4th stair is a talker, and into the kitchen where the banked fire is 1 red eye under its ash, and Ursule is already stood at the table, writing your day on a scrap with a stub of pencil, licking the lead, pressing hard. 6 errands. She reads them out and you say them back. That is the system. She can write it, but you can't read it, and both of you pretend the paper matters. Bread first, and the queue. Then, across the river, silk thread from the merchant on the Quai des Orfèvres, matched to a cutting she pins inside your coat. A letter to the school at Saint-Germain for Mademoiselle Hortense to go by the coach office. Fish, if the fish is honest, and Ursule's instructions on the honesty of fish are a full minute long. The apothecary for Madame's drops, and Calmelet's office, last, with a folded note, and you look up at that one, and Ursule says, "It's not the old kind of note," and you both let that be. The bread queue at 6 is 40 strong under a sky like wet slate, and it moves the way it always moves, in shuffles and rumours. The rumour this morning is Italy again. They're saying the general has beaten the Piedmontese so badly the king wants peace inside a fortnight. And an old man ahead of you, a cobbler by his apron, says to nobody, "Boy from nothing, cannon and nothing," and spits, but respectfully if such a thing can be. And it can. You saw it. The loaf, when you finally hold it, is warm through its grey crust, warm against your ribs inside your jacket like a small animal, and you carry it home at a trot, drop it, take your scrap and your coins and your pinned cutting, and go out into the full morning. And here is Paris in April of 1796, at street level, at a walking pace, since I have you for the length of it. Down the Rue du Mont Blanc with the shop shutters coming off in a ragged drum roll, boys your age hooking them up and stacking them, and the smell changing every 20 steps the way it does, coffee roasting somewhere and gone, a stable's hot straw reek, the cold iron smell of the pump on the corner where the water carriers are filling their pails in a clanking line, across the boulevard where the plane trees are in that first haze of green that lasts a week, and that you never once in your life managed to catch beginning, and the morning traffic is a river you enter sideways, drays, barrows, a herd of actual sheep being walked to slaughter with a dog, managing them better than most men manage anything, riders, and everywhere, the fiacres, the hired cabs, whose drivers conduct across the whole city. One single continuous argument about right of way that has been running since before the flood. You go down through the market streets where the noise is a solid thing you push against. Herbs, onions, the fish women of whom Ursula has taught you a proper fear, crying their wares in voices that could strip paint, and out onto the river at the Pont Neuf, and there you do what you always do, what everyone always does, 16 or 60. You stop, because the river gets you every time. The Seine going by grey-green and heavy with spring, barges working up against it, laundry boats moored in their long rafts with the sound of paddles on wet cloth carrying across the water like slow applause, and downstream the towers of Notre Dame standing in the haze. No cross on them now, the Republic took the crosses, and for 2 years the cathedral was a temple of reason, and then a warehouse for wine barrels, which is the revolution entire in one sentence if you ever need it. Gulls turning over the water, the parapet stone gritty and cold under your palms. You allow yourself the length of one barge passing under the bridge. That is the ration. One barge, prow to stern. And then you go on, because the thread merchant opens at 8. The thread merchant's shop on the quay is a cave of colour, drawers floor to ceiling, and the merchant matches Ursule's cutting by carrying it to the doorway and holding it to the north light, tilting it, grunting, pulling 3 skeins and discarding 2, and the transaction is conducted entirely in grunts, and it is perfect. The coach office for Hortense's letter is bedlam. Travellers and parcels and a clerk behind a grill age invisibly. The fish passes Ursule's tests. The eye, the gill, the smell behind the gill, and rides home hours later wrapped in 2 days of old newspaper, so that a bulletin of the Army of Italy spends the afternoon around a carp. The apothecary's is dim and bitter-smelling, herbs in bunches overhead, and the apothecary makes up Madam's drops with a glass rod, tap-tap on the vial, and asks after her health, with his head tilted, and you say what you are trained to say, which is that Madam is very well, and he says of course, in the voice of a man reading a different letter than the one you handed him. And Carmelette's office, last, up a dark stair off a courtyard full of lawyers' clerks eating standing up. You hand in Ursule's folded note, household accounts, the new kind of note, the kind that gets answered. And while you wait on the bench, you watch the clerks at their high desks, quills going like a field of black grasshoppers, and one of them is your clerk, the cold morning clerk. 3 even wraps himself, and he knows you too. And as you leave, he does something that finishes your education in 1 stroke. He nods to you. Not to the household, to you. One clerk to another, functionary of the great machine, professionally, across the courtyard of the year, and you nod back and go down the dark stair grinning like a fool at absolutely nothing, and walk the whole way home north with a fish under your arm and your feet singing and the plane trees greening and the light going long and gold up the boulevard. And that was the Thursday. Nothing happened. 6 errands happened. It is somehow one of the 4 or 5 days of your life you have kept every hour of, and you have long since stopped asking why. The days that stay are not the ones that shout. The night of the fated general is another matter, and it shouted. This is May, after Lodi, after Milan, when Paris has gone fully drunk on Italy in the Directory. 5 nervous men in a palace watching a subordinate become a son, decides that the thing to do with a fire is to stand next to it holding a torch and smiling. There are fetes, there are Te Deum without God, there are captured Austrian flags paraded to the Luxembourg, and there is, one warm evening, a great reception at which Madame la Générale is to be, there is no other word, exhibited, the Victory's wife. And you attend her, because attending her is the household's honour, and so it happens that on a May night in the year 4, you find yourself standing against the wall of an antechamber of the Luxembourg Palace, with her shawl over your arm, watching the Republic at play. I will give it to you as you got it, in senses, because that is how a wall sees a party. Heat first. 400 candles make a weather of their own, a soft pressing heat that reaches you in waves with the smell of the burning wax under everything, honey and smoke. Then the light, which is not like other light. Candle glare thrown back off mirrors and gilt and the polished floor until the whole room swims slightly, and every jewel on every throat is a small separate fire. And the women, the merveilleuses, the marvellous ones, in their Greek muslins, damped, some of them, to cling in sandals, in rings on their toes, in diamonds worn to the ankle. The women move through that swimming light the way carp move under a pond surface, slow, lit, unreal. And the men in coats cut like flower petals, and the talk, 400 voices in a stone room, a roar with no words in it, and under the roar a band, and over it now and then a woman's laugh going up like a rocket. Barras presiding like a landlord, every doorway jammed, and the food. You see the buffet only from across the room, but across the room is enough. Pyramids, actual pyramids of fruit, forced peaches in May, sugar work and standing against your wall. You do the arithmetic you swore off, the bread queue arithmetic, the number of grey loaves in one silver dish of peaches, and then you put the arithmetic away, deliberately, like folding a knife, because it cuts you and feeds nobody. And through it all moves Madame, and this is what you keep from that night. She is not the most beautiful woman in those rooms. Teresa Tallien is in those rooms, so nobody is. She is not the grandest dressed. But watch. You had the wall. You had 2 hours. You watched. Watch what happens around her. She moves slowly, always slowly, that unhurried Creole walk. And she gives each cluster of people the whole of her face, and she listens. That's the machinery. You finally see it plain. She listens the way other people perform, leaning in a little, everything about her saying you. Of all people and men, 3 times her consequence come away from 4 minutes of it walking taller, having told her things, having promised her things. She works the room the way Ursule works bread dough, without hurry and without mercy, and the room rises for her. And twice across those 2 hours her eyes find you at your wall, checking her lines of retreat, a general's habit. Prison teaches it, and the second time, catching you frankly staring at the whole blazing scene. She tips her head a fraction toward the pyramid of peaches and gives you, across the Luxembourg Palace, over the shoulders of the government of France, the crooked smile. Steal nothing, the smile says, but memorize everything. And you did, madam. 50 years. And here it all still is. Going home is the other half of the lesson, and the night insists on teaching it. Out of the blaze into the dark courtyard, the link boys' torches, the carriages called in bald names, and then the streets. Because the carriage takes the boulevard, and the boulevard at 1 a.m. is where the 2 cities finally touch. Past the gaming houses of the Palais Égalité spilling light, and men in ruins of fine coats. Past a woman asleep or worse in a doorway with 2 children fitted against her like spoons. Past the theatres going dark and the all-night cafes flaring, and at one corner in the carriage lamps for half a second, a boy your own exact age, barefoot on the cobbles in May, holding up 2 links of sausage for sale to the passing carriages, with a face on him that has finished hoping and is only working. And then the lamps sweep on, and he has gone backward into the dark, and Madame is silent in her corner of the seat, watching out her window, and you are silent on your perch, and neither of you says anything to the other because what is there? And the horses' hooves keep up their round wooden music the whole way north, and that is Paris in the spring of victories, peaches in pyramids, a boy with sausages in the dark, and one carriage rolling between them carrying a woman who has been both. There is one more day I owe you, and it is the highest one in the plain physical sense, and I have saved it for last on purpose, because it is the day the whole story arranged itself into a shape you could carry. It is a Sunday in early June, before the departure was fixed, in that suspended fortnight when the whole house was waiting for Madame to decide what the Directory had already decided for her, and Ursule, who has been watching you go grey-faced and short-sleeping with the strain of a house full of held breath, hands you at breakfast a heel of bread, a wedge of hard cheese wrapped in cloth, 2 sous, and an order. Out. All day. Go up the hill. Come back tired in the body for once instead of the head. The hill needs no name in your quarter. From the top of the Rue du Mont Blanc you can see it any clear day, closing the street like a green wall, Montmartre, with its windmills turning on the crest. So you go, and I will take you up it, because you have earned a view and so has the boy. North out of the fashionable streets, and the city loosens as you walk. The houses drop a story, then another. Gardens appear behind walls with lilac hanging over them so heavy you walk through pools of the smell, then market gardens in strips, cabbages and staked peas, and men hoeing in shirt-sleeves who straighten and watch you pass with the frank unhurried country stare you grew up under. The paving gives out. The road turns to packed dirt and then to a sunken lane climbing between banks, and the banks are chalk white where carts have scraped them. Gypsum, the whole hill is made of it. Plaster of Paris is called that because it is dug out of this very slope, and you pass the quarry mouths as you climb. Dark doorways cut straight into the hillside, breathing out cold cellar air that touches your sweating face like a hand, and men powdered white as millers trundling barrows out into the sun. The lane steepens. Your calves take up the argument. Your clogs skid on the chalky scree and you learn to walk on the grass edge, and the sounds of the city below have been dropping away behind you without your noticing, the way a pain stops, and what replaces them is wind in the grass. A lark somewhere up in the blue going like a little mad fountain, and, as you near the crest, a sound you know from no city at all. The deep rhythmic groan and swish of the windmills, canvas sails as long as trees turning against the sky, gears complaining inside their wooden towers, the whole hilltop creaking like a fleet at anchor. And then you turn around. Paris, all of it. Below you, and going out flat to the edge of the sky, 500,000 lives at one look, and the first thing it does is silence you. And the second thing it does is make you laugh. One syllable, involuntary, at the size of it. The city lies in its shallow bowl, smoking softly from 10,000 chimneys, a grey-gold haze over the whole of it, with the domes and towers standing up through the haze like rocks through mist, the Invalides' dome catching the sun and holding it, actually gleaming gold. The towers of Notre Dame small enough now to pinch between two fingers. The long gardens of the Tuileries a green stroke beside the river, and the river itself in silver segments where it turns, bridges stitched across it, and on its farther side the hills going south, and everywhere between the landmarks the endless brown-grey corduroy of roofs, streets invisible, whole quarters of struggle and noise folded away silent under tile. You find your own quarter by the boulevard's line of green. Somewhere under that one smudge of trees is the house, the courtyard, the drawer. From here it is nothing. From here the Luxembourg is nothing, a roof among roofs. You sit down on the warm grass with your bread and cheese, and the wind moves the grass around you all one way like a hand stroking a cat, and you eat looking at the whole machine at once. The machine you carry letters through, queue in, lie for a living in. And the cheese is sharp and the bread is grey, and it is the finest meal of the year. And sitting there, you think the thoughts a boy thinks on a hill, and one of them stays. You think, somewhere down there under that haze, in one room, 5 men are deciding whether one woman goes to Italy, and somewhere south, a long way past the edge of everything you can see, one man is winning battles partly at her, the way a boy shows off at a girl on the bank. And the haze doesn't care, and the river doesn't care, and this hill has stood here while kings' whole dynasties went by underneath it like weather. The city ate the frogs and kept their street's name. It will eat the directory and keep the buildings. It will eat, though you cannot know this yet, the little general too, and keep his bridges and his column and his story, and yours with it, since your story has caught on his the way a thread catches on a nail. From up here, that seems not frightening but restful, the way the view of a storm from a warm window is restful. Everything urgent is small from a height. That is the whole secret of hills and of years, and if you want it, of nights like this one. Get high enough, or old enough, or sleepy enough, and the drawer that will not close is just one dark grain in a golden haze, and the haze is beautiful. You come down in the long evening light with your legs pleasantly ruined, chalk dust to the knee, sunburn starting on the back of your neck in a warm stripe you'll feel for 2 days, and the city takes you back street by street, sound by sound, smell by smell, until by the boulevard you're a servant again with Monday in front of you. But you brought the hill down with you. Ursula sees it in your face at the kitchen door and nods once, satisfied, a physician whose prescription is answered, and says only, "There's soup." There was always soup. 60 governments could fall. There would be soup. If this story has a moral, and Ursula would say a story that needs one wasn't listening to itself, it is somewhere in that. The great world runs on belief, which is smoke, and the small world runs on soup, which is not. And you were lucky enough to spend the famous year of 1796 going up and down the stairs between the two, and to notice at 16 which one held when you leaned on it. The rest of that year, you know. The departure you stood lantern for. The summer of shutters and dust and swifts. The silver in the ticking, the ticked-off bills. The new girl on the stairs asking who was minding the drawer. Autumn, Arcole, the bulletins. And on the last night of the year, this is true, this happened, and it is the right place to leave the boy. On the last night of the year, Ursula and you sat up in the kitchen past midnight with the fire open, and a bottle of the wine merchant's Chambertin that Ursula had, in her phrase, liberated from the case for the household's morale, and drank the year out in sips like medicine. And Ursula raised her cup to the smoke-stained ceiling, to the house above and the people scattered from it, in Milan, in Saint-Germain, on campaign, and said the toast you have used at every year's end since, in every house you have lived in, under every government, and it never once failed to be exactly true. To them that's gone ahead, and to us that keeps the fires. Somebody has to do each. You're old now telling it. You have told it in wine shops under 3 more governments. You told it to your children on winter nights, and to a grandson who wrote some of it down and got the dog's name wrong. You have watched the man of the letters become first consul, then emperor. You stood in a December crowd in 1804 outside Notre Dame in the frost, packed shoulder to shoulder, and saw, for one clear second between shakos, the woman you served kneel in ermine before the altar of France to be crowned by her husband's own hands, and you thought, so help you, of a fur-lined cloak over a nightgown in a cold courtyard, and of chocolate for everyone. Yes, everyone. You outlived them both. She died first, at Malmaison, in 1814, of a chill taken walking in her gardens with a Russian Tsar, and they say the last word in the house was his name. He died on a rock in a far ocean 7 years later, and they say among the last words in that house was hers. Whether those stories are true, you don't know. In this Paris, a thing doesn't need to be true. It needs to be believable, and that one you believe. And since we are being honest tonight, at this hour, in the dark, there is one small thing more, one object, and then the boy can sleep, and so can you. The wax, the flat coin of candle wax from the table at the mairie, with its black curl of dead wick. You never told anyone this part, not Ursula, not your wife, not the grandson with the notebook. When the party was gathering cloaks that night, and the clerk had pinched the wick and turned away to his register, you put out 2 fingers and took it, just took it, off the tin, still faintly warm, soft enough at the edge to hold the print of your thumbnail, and slid it into your waistcoat pocket, and it rode home against your ribs while Barras boomed in the carriage, and Louise shivered, and the bride sat with her hand in her new husband's hand, thieving strictly, a servant palming property of the Republic, value nothing, and you have it still. It is in the small drawer of your own writing desk, an old man's desk now, in among the buttons and the sealing wax and a lock of hair, a lumpy grey-yellow coin of nothing that no one going through your things will look at twice. And that is the joke of it, the joke you save for last. Everyone who signed that register is in a tomb with their name on it, in letters of bronze, and the only witness who kept a piece of the actual evening, the burnt-down measure of the 2 hours the whole world story once ran late, is a boy nobody wrote down, in a drawer nobody will open. Your drawer at least closes. You have always kept it that way on purpose. Some jokes take 50 years to finish and are worth it, because you were there when it weighed nothing yet. That is your one distinction, and lying here now, with the lamp down and the house quiet, it is enough. History got the bridges and the crowns. You got the smell of hothouse violets inside a wet coat, and a splinter in your thumb, and a drawer that wouldn't close, and cold keys of fingers on your wrist at a carriage door, and a dog's growl held on one note like a bowed string, and laughter coming down through a floor at 1 in the morning. You got 2 nights and a lantern. Nobody can take a lantern from the boy who held it. The fire is banked. The coins are in the ticking. The hinges are oiled, all of them, and the house makes no sound at its doors. Tomorrow there will be water to haul and grates to black and a queue in the cold. Tomorrow the new girl will need showing how the knocker is answered. Tomorrow, somewhere south. More history, arriving as always at the worst hour by carriage. But that's tomorrow. Right now the attic is dark and the roof slopes close and friendly over your head, and the straw has given up its shape to yours, and the city outside is doing its endless settling murmur, cart by distant cart, bell by quarter bell. You're warm enough, tired enough, safe enough. You have a fire that will keep till morning, and silver in a mattress, and people below you in the house who would notice if you didn't come down. That's more than most of Paris has tonight. That's enough. Let the street noises fade now, the way they faded for a boy on the Rue Chantereine 230 years ago. Let the day loosen. Let the shoulders come down, and the hands uncurl, and the thoughts slow and soften, and finally stop. Centuries have passed. The Street of the Singing Frogs has a new name now. They renamed it Rue de la Victoire for Italy for him, and the little house is long gone, and the frogs are longer gone than that, and the empire went the way of the Assasnas. But people still lie down at the end of a long days in that city, and in yours, with the sounds of the world coming faintly through the walls, wondering what tomorrow will bring, exactly as that boy did. Some things don't change. The need for rest at the end of a long day, that doesn't change. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Antoine in his attic under the roof, on top of his fortune, with the whole story safe inside him. You've earned this rest. Take it. Good night.